Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this special edition of Defense News Weekly, we're here at the Association of the U.S. Army's annual meeting in Washington, looking at the future of the U.S. Army. We'll get the latest information on the Army's transformation and see the newest technology being developed firsthand, with in-depth interviews, up-close video, and leading analysis. This is Defense News Weekly. Welcome to this week's special edition of Defense News Weekly. I'm Jeff Martin, and we're here overlooking the floor of the AUSA Annual Meeting in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you, we have a packed show for you today. But before we visit the floor and our studio here, let's take a look at some news that was made this week. Up first is that right now, the U.S. Army and the military as a whole is under a continuing resolution, meaning nothing new could start in the roughly 2-week-old 2020 fiscal year. And as a result, some of the Army's top priorities are in jeopardy. At least that's according to an Army document obtained by Defense News. Some highlights include the next generation combat vehicle, a mobile medium-range missile, and various other technologies being worked on by the Soldier Lethality CFT and others. The current continuing resolution runs until November 21st, and the hope is that Congress can pass a spending bill by that point. So to get more information on the impact that continuing resolution is going to have on the Army's modernization goals, I caught up with Lieutenant General Eric Wesley, who's head of the Futures and Concepts Center for the Army at Fort Eustis in Virginia. Here's what he had to say during his visit to our studio here on the floor. Sir, thanks for taking the time to join us here in the studio. I know AUSA is busy for you. So first of all, let's jump right into it. Army Modernization Strategy, finally seeing the rollout.
Yes,
what's the reaction
fantastic. By the way, thanks for having us here. Defense News got a great setup here. Listen, the Army Modernization Strategy is fundamental to taking the Army forward. I think we talked before, last year we released the operating concept, which is called multi-domain operations. But an Army can't modernize with just a description of how you want to fight in the future. The next step, the next logical step is to publish a strategy which really carves a pathway or a roadmap to the future and the decisions you have to make. And the outline of it is effective. It really talks about how we fight, how the Army will fight, what we'll fight with, and then it goes on to talk about who we are. So how we fight, what we fight with, and who we are. And that's sort of the framework of this document. But the most important thing is it holds the enterprise to account for the requirements over time so that when we get to 2028, in fact, we have the Army we intended to build all along from the very beginning.
So this year, we've started this fiscal year under a continuing resolution. How's that impact the Army Modernization Strategy? Because a lot of new starts are stalled right now.
Yeah, listen, if the Army is, or rather the nation, is serious about continuing to sustain our ability to influence the world on behalf of our ethics and morals and our beliefs, you gotta invest in your security. And so a CR is just doesn't allow you to modernize. It allows you to hold status quo. And anybody knows about any kind of institution or any kind of investment strategy, if you stay status quo, you won't continue to grow and sustain what you've had in the past.
Up next, let's head over to the world of combat vehicles. As two companies, BAE and General Dynamics, are competing to build a new light tank for the Army's Infantry Brigade combat teams. Now, soldiers are going to get a say in who wins, because starting next year, both submissions are going to be rigorously tested for about a year to figure out which one performs better. And as for what those entries are, BAE is entering a modernized version of the M8 Buford armored gun system, and General Dynamics is taking an Ajax IFV chassis and putting an Abrams turret on it. The first units are expected to equip by the winter, by 2025. And another major combat vehicle program is the Army's Bradley Replacement Program, which hit a snag this month, as the Raytheon and Rheinmetall Lynx vehicle was disqualified from competing for an engineering contract in the program. To get more information, Jen Judson asked the Army's top 2 officials for that area of modernization during their visit to our studio. Take a look.
So I wanted to ask, obviously a lot has happened with the Optionally Manned Fighting Vehicle program in the last couple of weeks. You were due to accept bid samples on October 1st. And it appears that you only have one bid sample. So I just wanted to ask, what is the Army thinking in terms of keeping this competitive? Or are you going to move forward as planned in this particular competition? Or do you have any plans to change anything that you're doing now since you only have one bid sample?
The program's going to stay on track. We are where we are with the dates. We've been clear about the deadlines for quite some time, and General Kaufman has the requirements for industry. we're in all programs, no matter which programs we have, we're always finding new ways to induce competition at various stages. One, because of the entire industrial base, both private and public, deserves a right to be able to compete, and then we're always looking for new ways to do things. And we also don't want to lose traditional and non-traditional partners, so competition is what you want on every program.
Moving on over to Army aviation, Boeing and Sikorsky's SB-1 Defiant concept demonstrator, which is part of the Army's Future Vertical Lift effort, is back in the air after some modifications had to be made to the gearbox. Now, the Defiant is a coaxial aircraft based on Sikorsky's X-2 technology, and along with Bell's V-280 Valor, is a key part of the Army's Joint Multi-Role Tech Demonstrator program. And as for what's coming up in other parts of Army aviation, during a panel discussion on the topic in our studio, Brigadier General Wally Rugen offered a preview of what's ahead for his cross-functional team.
And General Murray will sign our air-launched effects requirements document. It's been through the AROC process in the coming days. It could be as early as this week. I think you saw an RFI come out. We got 37 white papers back.
Wow.
We're pouring through those white papers, and you'll see an award next quarter for ALE. So we're moving out, and I think industry's right there with us. A lot of small, innovative companies are really helping us solve this problem.
Okay. When you say that there's going to be an award coming out, is that multiple awards to companies that have ideas and offerings, or what are you looking for specifically?
I think it will be multiple, and it will be in our effort to again integrate it on surrogate platforms, but be able to use it in our multi-domain environments.
Moving on over to the area of long-range precision fires. One buzzword that you'll hear a lot here at this show is hypersonics. And the U.S. Army is helping to lead the way there, spearheading work on the Common Hypersonic Glide Body. The service has awarded a contract to Huntsville-based Dynetics to build the first set of glide bodies, which will then be integrated into a weapon system by Lockheed Martin. Right now, the plan is to field a new ground-launched long-range hypersonic weapon by fiscal year 2023, and that glide body is also going to be used by both the Air Force and Navy for their own hypersonic weapons. Another area of work is the work that is progressing in the Army's Future Strategic Long-Range Cannon, which has a planned range of 1,000 miles. Right now, the Army is working with White Sands Missile Range and other organizations to figure out exactly what is possible before demonstrating a prototype of the weapon in 2023. Now, once that demo is done, the Army is going to make a decision about whether or not to proceed to a full program of record. One reason the service is looking at a cannon is because artillery rounds are a heck of a lot cheaper than long-range missiles. And another key part of the long-range fires portfolio is the work being done to replace aging ATACMS missiles with a new precision strike missile. During his visit to our studio, Brigadier General John Rafferty, who leads the CFT for this area, gave an update on where things stand in that program.
I wanted to hit on sort of the hot topic, I think, aside from hypersonics, which is range. I think everybody is interested in where the Army is headed now that we're no longer bound to the INF treaty and 499 kilometers. We're developing a missile for 499, couldn't go beyond that. So now, talk about what the Army is doing to think about going beyond the 499 kilometer range now that it can.
Yeah, so getting relieved from the INF restrictions, I think was an important step for us in exploring those ranges beyond 499, because we were not just limited from putting capability in the field that would go that farther than that, but also really limited our S&T investments. And so we didn't have a lot of advanced energetics and investments in those sort of areas to get us at those ranges. So we remain right now committed to the form factor, so the size of the precision strike missile. The fact that we're going to get 2 per launch pod container is a real distinct advantage on the battlefield for us. But we know that now that we've lifted this 499 artificial constraint, we know that these missiles that we're developing now will go farther than 499 kilometers. We intend to change the objective range in the requirement document, but what we want to do is get a few test shots off first, and then we can let our 2 competitors and our S&T community do some evaluation of the models, right? So they can confirm the modeling,
right?
And then we really can see, because this first, these first couple of shots won't be at the max range. We won't get to that for about another 18 months or so. But what we want to do is kind of confirm those models and then update our estimates of how far we think they'll go, and then we'll look at adjusting the objective range for the precision strike missile. But so we're we'll put this urgent material release capability in the field of a missile that goes beyond 500 kilometers. We'll do that in 2023. And then in 2025, our main objective is to deliver the cross-domain capability, and so that'll be the sensor package on the front end of the missile that is already showing incredible promise. And so we think that in 23 we'll take that sensor package, it'll be mature enough, and do a test flight on a PRISM missile, and then be able to make a selection and then go into an urgent material release for that in 2025.
And moving over to the halls of the Pentagon, we're learning that the Army is going to have to make some tough choices in the next round of the service's Night Court, which is the process where Army leaders sit down and evaluate the entire budget to figure out what to cut and what to keep. It's a process that's been done on both the FY20 and FY21 budgets. But as for future budgets, it's not going to be as easy, as money is going to get harder to find as fat is trimmed each year. Meetings for the next round, focused on the 2022 to 2026 budgets, are set to begin later this month, and senior leaders say they're going to be taking a hard look at what to fund and what not to fund. And during this year's annual meeting, the Army's new leadership has been on full display, many wearing those spiffy new Army dress uniforms. During his visit to the Defense News studio, new Chief of Staff General James McConville gave Jim Judson an update on the Army's new multi-domain task force and the work the Army has been doing to be ready to deploy to fight anywhere in the world.
I wanted to ask you about how multi-domain task forces are going to be evolving. How units centered around multi-domain operations will be evolving going forward. Are you looking at potentially developing more multi-domain task forces to go into the Pacific or into Europe? I know you're just standing up one in Europe, but what's the plan for those? And how is that going to help take shape the units that you want to operationalize in a multi-domain operations ready Army?
Sure. I think it starts with, what do we want the multi-domain task forces to do? And I would say two things. One is provide long-range precision effects, and the second is long-range precision fires. So you almost have, a kinetic capability and a non-kinetic capability below the level of conflict. So the centerpiece of these organizations is what we're calling I2Qs. We always have to have an acronym, and that stands for intelligence, information operations, cyber, electronic warfare, and space. And we're forming those battalions right now. And at the same time as we develop long-range precision fires, hypersonics, the PRISM missile system, we will develop batteries in that capability. And that would also become part of the long-range precision fires for those multi-domain task forces. And then what we see is, depending on where we go, whether we go to the Pacific or we go to Europe, they'll have different needs or different requirements. And then we have the ability to task organize those organizations. They may need infantry for security. They may need some type of air and missile defense capabilities so we can protect them. They may need some attack aviation capability to conduct those type of operations. So what we're doing is we're experimenting with right now. We see ourselves developing two for the Pacific, the Indo-Pacific, and then one for Europe as we start.
Okay. Are there any plans, I know it's very early because Europe, you're just standing it up now, and it probably won't be considered sort of operationalized for another year. Why is the Pacific getting two? Is it because they're further along in developing task force appropriate for the Pacific?
I think first of all, we've talked to the COCOM commander. I've talked to Admiral Davison, and he's actually requested two. And when we look at how we can see employing them, especially in the island chains and some of the capabilities that we want to have, and the priority that we've given to that theater, is why we're going down that road. And again, we'll take a look at Europe and some other places, and then from there we'll develop more as required.
Okay, great. I wanted to also ask about the Defender exercise.
Sure.
Since we're talking about multi-domain operations task forces in Europe and the Pacific, you're doing two very large exercises in Europe and the Pacific in 2020. It seems like the Pacific one will be a little bit smaller, 21. They'll go larger. What's the plan for the Defender series?
I think, that when it comes to the Defender series, what we're looking at is really testing our strategic readiness. We've talked a lot. The way, as a new chief, I've kind of broken down the readiness into two areas. One is tactical readiness, and one is strategic readiness. When I talk about tactical readiness, what I mean is the actual units, the brigades, the divisions, battalions. Are they ready to go to combat? We want to make sure they're ready to go and And General Milley's did a great job of getting our units to the level of readiness they're at right now. But what I want to make sure is I can get them to where they need to be. We have a term with the National Defense Strategy, which is dynamic force employment. And so we need to be able to deploy them into the theater of operations to deter potential adversaries, and we need to be able to do it very, very quick. So part of strategic readiness is, first of all, mobilizing our reserve forces, making sure we can mobilize those units that we're going to need, actually deploying them, whether that's by sea or air, and then receiving them in the theater and being able to deploy them and sustain them while they're there. And that's all part of this exercise that we will run in Europe, and then we'll do the same thing in the Pacific.
Okay. Do you see it becoming an annual exercise? It seems to me that may be what the thinking is, but what is your thinking on that?
Well, I think what we're looking at right now is a major exercise in Europe in 20, a smaller exercise in the Pacific, and then next year we switch around, a major exercise in the Pacific and a smaller exercise in Europe.
Okay, but the plan for maybe 3 years down the line is yet to
well, we're going to wait and see what see how things turn out. Yeah.
Okay. Any ideas to potentially exercise the Defender series on the homeland front? Just moving things to ports. Well, exercising that more frequently. Maybe you don't make it all the way to Europe, but
well, we routinely do that with our combat training center deployments. Sometimes we do them by sea. Sometimes we do them with emergency deployment rating exercises where they don't know. So we do that all the time in the States. Yeah, making sure, because when you look at it, we're talking about rail lines and moving to ports and making sure our ports and the ships are there that go ahead and do that.
To keep up to date with all of our coverage, be sure to visit our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Also, be sure to add us on Apple's News app and other platforms for the latest updates. And when we come back, we're going to head down to the exhibit floor to get hands-on with many of the new weapons and vehicles that are being shown off. Welcome back to this special edition of Defense News Weekly. It's now time for my favorite part of trade shows like this, where I'm going to head down to the exhibit floor and go hands-on with new weapons and vehicles. Up first is a pretty impressive cannon that's set to equip the winner of the Bradley replacement program. Let's check it out. So here at Northrop Grumman's booth, what you see here is a 30mm cannon that you would see equipped on Strykers. But this is a 50mm gun. Now, as you can see, it's a much bigger weapon. And just how big is it? Well, this is that 30mm shell. This is the 50mm shell. So as you can see, it's a heck of a lot bigger and a lot more powerful. So what exactly is this gun going to be used for? Well, right now it's under evaluation by the U.S. Army to equip the next generation combat vehicle, which will replace Bradley fighting vehicles across the Army. And the big and unique thing about this gun is it doesn't matter who's going to win that program, because the government is providing it to all the competitors who will be entering in that. So it's safe to say that whatever ends up replacing the Bradley is going to have a lot more firepower than current vehicles currently do. Another big gun that's on display is much larger than that 50mm cannon, and it can certainly fire a heck of a lot further. So let's go see the BAE Systems Extended Range Cannon Artillery ERCA prototype. Walking through the halls here at AUSA 2019, it's incredibly hard to miss BAE's ERCA cannon that I'm standing under here. Now, ERCA stands for Extended Range Cannon Artillery, and it's a key part of the U.S. Army's long-range precision fires portfolio. Now, as you can see, it resembles a normal Paladin howitzer that you might see, except for the fact that the barrel is pretty longer, and there are a lot of changes with how this vehicle can fire. The biggest thing is its range. Normal Paladin can fire about 35-kilometer range with a standard shell. This thing could reach up to 70 is the plan for the Army. Now, we talked earlier today with some of the Army's leaders for this effort, and what they told us is that a cannon is a key part of that because it allows them to put fire on target much cheaper and faster than you might have necessarily with a missile. Now, again, as you look up at this, you see the much longer barrel that this has than your standard, which is something that makes it incredibly distinct. Now, another thing that's being worked on for this is an autoloader. The Army's looking to do that because it would help increase the rate of fire and help with the automation that with vehicles like this as the Army looks to the future. So again, this is one of the more impressive vehicles that we've seen here at AUSA 2019 and plays right in with the Army's top priority. Another high-profile vehicle that's on display is the new Mobile Short-Range Air Defense Stryker. Here's a look at that vehicle and what's next for the program. So right when you walk in the floor here at AUSA 2019, one of the first things you're going to see is this vehicle, which is the Army's answer for Mobile Short-Range Air Defense. Now, the vehicle itself is a General Dynamics Stryker with a Moog turret, and it's all being integrated by Leonardo DRS. So as you look at that turret, what you're seeing You see longbow Hellfire missiles, a 30mm gun, a machine gun, and then a Stinger missile launcher on the other side. Now the whole point of having a mobile vehicle like this is so that a vehicle like this can move with the maneuver force throughout, rather than having a fixed short-range air defense site that has to stop and fire before it can do much else. This vehicle is mobile and will be able to keep up with Stryker Brigade combat teams. Now this program is moving very quickly. When I talked to Leonardo DRS earlier today about how things have been going, they talked about the speed of this program.
And in 12 months, we've gone from PowerPoint slides to hardware that's being tested. 25 years in the Army, I don't know that I've ever seen a program move that quickly. That's the government and industry. That's three partners, DRS, GDLS, and Raytheon working together to get it done.
Now, it's not all ground combat vehicles that I got to experience here at the show, as Bell is showing off their entry in the Army's Future Attack Recon Aircraft competition, which is known as the 360 Invictus. Now let's go up close and take a look. Here at the AUSA 2019 show floor, one of the other things we're seeing is this, the Bell 360 Invictus. Now this is Bell's entry in the Army's Future Attack Reconnaissance, or FARA program, and it's quite an impressive aircraft. Let's start here with this panel. So this is actually the aircraft's weapons area. So this will open up when needed to deploy those weapons, but it folds in for drag to allow the aircraft to hit faster speeds than conventional helicopters. As you can see here, dual cockpit here, which Bell says uses some of the latest and most advanced technology. And then when you look up there, you see the rotor blades that we have. Those are based on Bell's 525 helicopter, which is allowing this aircraft to be fielded a little faster than conventional. Now, Bell's one of 5 competitors in this program, which the down select will happen early next year. So this is quite the impressive aircraft. We've got a lot to see. And again, with the goal of being attack and reconnaissance. For Defense News, I'm Jeff Martin. Thanks for watching my trips down to the exhibit floor. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at how video games and the Army are combining. On this week's Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack offers her latest tips.
Whether you're military or civilian, retirement planning comes with a host of options to consider. Social Security, tax advantage savings, a 401k, TSP, and contrary to the way the word sounds, annuities can also be a practical tool for retirement planning. An annuity is a contract between you and an insurance company that turns your initial investment into a guaranteed stream of income when you retire. Much like getting a paycheck. There are 2 main types, fixed and variable. A fixed annuity gives you a minimum rate of return that stays the same regardless of changes in the market, while a variable annuity offers an adjustable payout depending on how much the market swings. On either type of annuity, your contribution will be secured for a certain amount of time. And just like an IRA, there are penalties for withdrawing before you're 59.5 years old. Tax benefits also differ depending on the annuity. For most people, a 401k, your TSP, or an IRA make the most sense for retirement because they're relatively low risk. But if you've maxed out your contribution limits for those accounts, an annuity may be a great place for extra retirement savings. To get it right, always work with a trusted financial advisor to map out the best retirement plan for you and your finances.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next time. To get more Defense News coverage, be sure to visit our website at defensenews.com and subscribe to our Early Bird Brief, delivered to your inbox every weekday morning to get you ready to start the day. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at how video games and the Army combine. One of the most fun things I got to experience this week here at the show was the Army's esports gaming trailer, where I was able to experience with the Army's Vice Chief of Staff, the Sergeant Major of the Army, and the head of the service's recruiting efforts. And let me tell you, it was a lot of fun. So when you think Army recruiting, video games isn't always what you go with. So I'm here at AUSA 2019. I've got some of the Army leadership here to kind of talk through one of the initiatives that I never thought I'd really see with the Army with esports. What's it feel like to see esports as an Army recruiting initiative?
Gaming's really, in my personal opinion, the link between the soldier and the person that's interested in why are soldiers interested in gaming. They find out they got a common interest, and the next thing you know, the people that are coming to talk to the soldiers, they see that they're a lot like the soldiers, and so it's possibilities for opportunities to serve in the Army.
This is not just about the military. This is big for America. So if we're going to pull from the American society, we got to pull from everybody from America. So I was a gamer when I was a kid. Only my game was Pac-Man. And it's just changed. And so, you know, we got to pull from the American people. We got a lot of great citizens out there. We just got to open up the way we think about. We got great potentials that are going to be out there. They're just playing games. They just play a different game than we did when we were younger.
There's a lot of things you can do in the Army. I never thought I'd necessarily see a gamer would be something you can do in the Army for your recruiting. How neat is that to have kind of those under your command?
Well, so it's not their MOS. They all have to be soldiers from the field, but we did tryouts this year. 8,000 soldiers signed up for 20 slots. That's how popular it is amongst our soldiers. And just like the Vice said, it is to start that dialogue. We are recruiting the Army of tomorrow today. And so it's what is their interest in technology, because the Army, that's what we're moving towards, high-tech everything, unmanned aerial systems, robotics, and that's where the dialogue starts. And the youth of today are very interested in that, and we're very interested in them joining our ranks.
That's all we've got time for this week, but thank you for watching our show here from the annual meeting. And be sure to visit our digital show daily at defensenews.com for all of our coverage. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.